The rain-slicked streets of Manhattan gleamed under neon lights. But Jordan's heart raced faster than the city's pulse. He stood outside the towering glass office of Pinnacle Media, clutching a portfolio that held his dreams and a plan far riskier than any pitch. Tonight, he'd play naive to win over Ethan Caldwell, the ice-cold colleague who could make or break his career and maybe his heart. Jordan, 25, had been at Pinnacle for 6 months, a junior graphic designer scraping by in a cutthroat world of deadlines and egos. His small-town roots in Georgia made him an oddity among New York's sleek professionals. But his boyish charm and quick wit had won over most of the team. Except Ethan. At 27, Ethan was the star copywriter, a man whose sharp green eyes and clipped words could silence a room. His reputation for brilliance was matched only by his aloofness, a wall of frost no one could crack. Jordan, though, saw something else in those rare moments when Ethan's gaze lingered, a flicker of vulnerability, a spark of something unspoken. The office was nearly empty at 8 p.m., the hum of computers fading as Jordan stepped into the conference room. Ethan was there, as expected, hunched over a laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. The dim light cast shadows over his angular face, accentuating his high cheekbones and the faint stubble on his jaw. Jordan's breath caught. He'd spent weeks crafting this moment, playing the eager rookie to get closer to Ethan. But tonight was different. Tonight, he'd push the boundaries. Ethan, you're still here. Jordan's voice was light, feigning surprise as he set his portfolio on the table. I thought I'd be the only one burning the midnight oil. Ethan didn't look up. Deadlines don't care about your social life. Jordan, his tone was as cold as the glass walls around them. But Jordan didn't flinch. He'd learned to read the subtle shifts in Ethan's voice, the way it softened. Just a fraction. When he said Jordan's name. I brought some mock-ups for the Hudson campaign, Jordan said, sliding a folder toward Ethan. I could use your input. You know, since you're the genius around here, he flashed a grin, leaning slightly closer, letting his sleeve brush Ethan's arm. It was a calculated move, one he'd practiced in his head a dozen times. Ethan's fingers paused on the keyboard. For a moment, the air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken tension. Then Ethan pushed the folder back without opening it. I'm not your mentor. Jordan. Figure it out. The rejection stung. But Jordan caught the briefest glance Ethan shot his way, those green eyes locking onto his for a heartbeat before darting back to the screen. Got you, Jordan thought. He leaned back, crossing his arms to accentuate the way his blazer hugged his frame. Okay, fair. But I'm not leaving till I get this right. Maybe you could just take a quick look? For the team. Ethan sighed, a sound that carried more exhaustion than annoyance. He flipped open the folder, his gaze scanning Jordan's designs. These are decent, he said finally, his voice grudging. But the color palette's too safe. It's a campaign for a luxury brand, not a community newsletter. Jordan nodded, biting his lip in a way he knew drew attention. I knew you'd say that. That's why I need you. Ethan, you see things I don't. He let his voice dip, soft and earnest, watching Ethan's jaw tighten. Don't play coy, Ethan said sharply, but he didn't move away. Instead, he leaned closer, pointing at a design element. This gradient here, it's lazy. You're better than that. Jordan's pulse quickened. Ethan's critique was harsh, But the fact that he was engaging at all was a victory. "Show me how you'd fix it," Jordan said, sliding his chair closer until their knees nearly touched. He could smell Ethan's cologne, a crisp mix of cedar and citrus, and it made his head spin. Ethan hesitated, then grabbed his stylus and began sketching on the tablet. His movements were precise, almost mesmerizing, as he reworked the design. Jordan watched, not the screen, but Ethan's hands, long fingers, steady and sure. He wondered what those hands would feel like against his skin, then pushed the thought away. Focus. This was a game, and he was playing to win. They worked late into the night, the city's skyline glittering beyond the windows. Jordan kept up the act, wide-eye questions, subtle compliments, the occasional brush of contact. Ethan's walls didn't crumble, but they wavered. By the time they packed up, Ethan's tone had softened, and he even offered a rare half-smile when Jordan thanked him. As they stepped into the elevator, Jordan took a chance. "Hey, Ethan, maybe we could grab a coffee sometime? To talk shop." His heart pounded, but he kept his expression open, innocent. Ethan's eyes narrowed, studying him. For a moment, Jordan thought he'd overplayed his hand. Then Ethan said, "Maybe. If you stop acting like you don't know what you're doing." The elevator doors closed, leaving Jordan grinning in the dark. The next week, Jordan doubled down. He arrived early, stayed late, and made himself indispensable to Ethan's projects. Each interaction was a carefully choreographed dance, innocent questions laced with just enough flirtation to keep Ethan off balance. But Ethan wasn't as predictable as Jordan had hoped. There were moments when Ethan's gaze lingered too long, his voice dropping to a low, teasing murmur that sent shivers down Jordan's spine. It was as if Ethan knew the game and was playing it better. One afternoon, Pinnacle's creative director, Marissa, called an emergency meeting. The Hudson campaign was faltering, and the client was threatening to pull out. Jordan sat across from Ethan, watching as Marissa grilled the team. Ethan, as always, was composed, his answers sharp and confident. But when Marissa turned to Jordan, his heart sank. "Jordan, your designs are holding us back," she said bluntly. "They're not bold enough. Fix it by tomorrow, or we're reassigning the project." The room went silent. Jordan's face burned, but he nodded, forcing a smile. "I'll get it done." Inside, he was reeling. He'd poured everything into those designs, and now they were being torn apart. Worse, Ethan hadn't said a word to defend him. After the meeting, Jordan lingered in the break room, nursing a coffee and his bruised ego. He didn't notice Ethan enter until he spoke. "You okay?" Ethan's voice was quieter than usual, almost gentle. Jordan looked up, startled. "Just processing. I thought I had it right." He let his shoulders slump, playing the part of the defeated rookie, but his eyes flicked to Ethan's, searching for a reaction. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Marissa's tough, but she's not wrong. You're playing it safe." "Jordan." "Why?" The question caught Jordan off guard. He'd expected criticism, not curiosity. "I don't know," he lied, stirring his coffee. "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this." Ethan's laugh was low, almost bitter. "Don't give me that. I've seen your work. You're good, too good to be pulling this innocent act." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "What are you really after?" Jordan's breath hitched. Ethan's eyes were intense, pinning him in place. For a moment, he considered dropping the facade, confessing everything, his attraction, his plan, his hopes. But that would be losing the game. Instead, he tilted his head, offering a shy smile. I just want to learn from the best. That's you, right? Ethan's expression flickered. Amusement, suspicion, something else Jordan couldn't name. Keep telling yourself that, he said, then walked out, leaving Jordan with a racing heart and a sinking feeling that Ethan was onto him. That night, Jordan stayed late again, reworking the Hudson designs. He was alone in the office when Ethan appeared, holding 2 takeout coffees. Thought you could use this, Ethan said, setting one on the desk. You're not giving up, are you? Jordan took the coffee, their fingers brushing. The contact sent a jolt through him, but he kept his voice steady. Not a chance. But I could use your help. Again, he gestured to the screen, where his new designs glowed. Ethan pulled up a chair, and they worked side by side, the hours slipping away. Ethan's suggestions were sharp, but his tone was warmer now, almost encouraging. When Jordan leaned closer to point at the screen, Ethan didn't pull away. Their shoulders touched, and neither moved to break the contact. By midnight, the designs were stronger, bolder, everything Marissa had demanded. Jordan leaned back, stretching, aware of Ethan's eyes on him. We make a good team, Jordan said, letting his voice linger on the words. Ethan's gaze was unreadable. Don't get used to it, he said, but there was no bite in his tone. He stood, grabbing his coat. Get some sleep, Jordan. You'll need it. As Ethan left, Jordan stared at the empty doorway, his mind racing. Ethan was playing a game of his own, one Jordan didn't fully understand. But he was in too deep to back out now. The Hudson campaign was a hit. Marissa's praise at the next meeting was grudging but genuine, and Jordan felt a surge of pride. Ethan, sitting across the table, gave him a nod, small, but enough to make Jordan's chest tighten. The victory was sweet, but the real thrill was Ethan's subtle shift. He was still guarded, still sharp-edged, but there were cracks in his armor now, moments when his eyes softened or his voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there before. Outside work, Jordan began to notice Ethan everywhere. A glance across the office, a brush of hands in the elevator, a shared laugh over a bad client email. Each moment felt like a step closer, but also a step into uncharted territory. Ethan wasn't just responding to Jordan's act. He was countering it, with a confidence that made Jordan question who was really in control. One Friday evening, the team went out for drinks at a sleek bar in Soho. Jordan arrived late, his nerves buzzing. Ethan was already there, leaning against the bar, a whiskey in hand. He looked effortlessly striking in a black button-up, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his blonde hair catching the dim light. Jordan took a deep breath and joined him, ordering a gin and tonic to steady his hands. You clean up nice, Jordan said, letting his eyes linger on Ethan's frame. It was bolder than usual, but the alcohol and the crowd gave him courage. Ethan raised an eyebrow, a faint smirk playing on his lips. You're not so bad yourself. His gaze flicked over Jordan's fitted blazer and dark jeans. And for a moment, the air between them felt charged. Electric. They talked, the conversation flowing easier than it ever had at work. Ethan shared stories of his early days at Pinnacle, his ambition to climb higher, his frustration with the corporate games. Jordan listened, captivated, but he also noticed the way Ethan's guard dropped, the way his laughter came more freely. It was intoxicating, and Jordan leaned into it, letting his knee brush Ethan's under the bar. As the night wore on, the crowd thinned, and their teammates drifted away. Jordan and Ethan stayed, their conversation turning personal. Ethan admitted he'd grown up in Boston, raised by a single mother who'd worked 2 jobs to keep him in school. Jordan shared his own story, leaving Georgia to chase a dream in New York. The loneliness of a city that never slowed down. For the first time, they weren't playing roles. They were just Jordan and Ethan, 2 men finding common ground in a noisy world. When the bar closed, they stepped into the cool night air, the city alive around them. Jordan's heart pounded as he turned to Ethan. "Walk with me," he asked, his voice soft but steady. Ethan hesitated, then nodded. They wandered through Washington Square Park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot. The silence between them was comfortable, but heavy with possibility. Jordan stopped under a street lamp, his breath visible in the chilly air. "Ethan, I like working with you. More than I probably should." Ethan's eyes locked onto his, intense and searching. For a moment, Jordan thought he'd crossed a line. Then Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "You're dangerous, Jordan. You know that." Before Jordan could respond, Ethan's hand brushed his cheek, a fleeting touch that sent heat racing through him. Then Ethan pulled back, his expression unreadable. "Good night, Jordan," he said, turning away. Jordan watched him go, his heart a tangle of hope and confusion. Ethan was letting him in, but there was something else, something guarded, almost calculated, in his actions. The game wasn't over. It was just getting more dangerous. Jordan couldn't shake the memory of Ethan's touch. It haunted him through the weekend, replaying in his mind as he wandered the city, trying to make sense of it. By Monday, he was determined to push further, to see how far Ethan would let this go. But something had shifted. Ethan was colder again, his responses clipped, his eyes avoiding Jordan's. It was as if a night in the park had never happened. At work, Jordan threw himself into a new project, a campaign for a tech startup. Ethan was assigned as his partner, and the tension between them was palpable. They worked late again, but this time, Ethan kept his distance, his comments strictly professional. Jordan's frustration grew. Had he misread everything? Was Ethan pulling back because he'd sensed Jordan's game? One evening, as they finalized a presentation, Jordan couldn't take it anymore. He closed his laptop and faced Ethan. "What's going on with you? One minute you're you, and the next you're acting like I don't exist." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't look up. "I'm here to work, Jordan, not play games." The words hit like a slap. Jordan leaned forward, his voice low. "Is that what you think this is? A game?" He let his hurt show. "Real this time. No pretense." "Because I thought we were getting somewhere." Ethan finally met his gaze. And for a moment, Jordan saw it again, that flicker of vulnerability. Then Ethan stood, grabbing his coat. "You don't know what you're getting into," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Be careful, Jordan." The warning lingered in the air as Ethan left. Jordan sat there, his mind racing. What was Ethan hiding? The question gnawed at him, and he began to notice things he hadn't before. Ethan's late-night phone calls, the way he tensed when certain emails came through, the guarded looks he exchanged with Marissa. There was something bigger at play, something Jordan hadn't accounted for. Determined to find answers, Jordan started digging. He stayed late, sifting through old project files, looking for clues. One night, he found an encrypted email thread between Ethan and an unknown contact, buried in a shared drive. The subject line read, "Pinnacle leak." His heart sank. Was Ethan involved in something shady? A corporate scandal? Betrayal? Jordan confronted Ethan the next day, cornering him in the empty break room. "What's Pinnacle leak?" he demanded, holding up a printout of the email header. Ethan's face went pale, his calm facade cracking. "Where did you get that?" he hissed, stepping closer. "You need to drop this, Jordan. Now, not until you tell me what's going on." Jordan shot back, standing his ground. "I trusted you." "I thought," he trailed off, his voice breaking. "I thought you felt something too." Ethan's eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low and urgent. "This isn't about us. It's bigger than that. If you keep digging, you'll get hurt." Jordan's heart pounded, torn between fear and defiance. "Then tell me the truth, Ethan. Let me in." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he stepped closer, so close Jordan could feel his breath. "You want the truth?" Ethan whispered. "Fine. But once you know, there's no going back." Ethan's truth was a bombshell. Over coffee in a quiet diner, away from the office's prying eyes, he confessed. Pinnacle Media was under investigation for unethical practices, falsifying data to inflate campaign results, bribing clients to secure contracts. Ethan had been approached by an external auditor months ago, tasked with gathering evidence from the inside. He'd been playing a dangerous game, pretending to be loyal to Pinnacle while feeding information to the authorities. "I didn't want you involved," Ethan said, his voice heavy with guilt. "You were too good. Too real. I couldn't risk dragging you into this." Jordan's mind reeled. The man he'd been chasing, the one he'd thought was just a cold colleague, was risking everything to expose corruption. It made Ethan's distance, his guarded moments, make sense, but also hurt. "Why didn't you trust me?" Jordan asked, his voice raw. "I could have helped." Ethan's eyes met his, filled with regret. "Because I was starting to care about you. And that's dangerous in a game like this." The admission hit Jordan like a tidal wave. All this time, he'd thought he was the one manipulating the situation. But Ethan had been playing a far riskier game, one that could cost him his career, maybe more. Jordan reached across the table, his hand covering Ethan's. "I'm in now," he said firmly. "Let me help." Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. They began working together in secret, combing through files, decoding emails, and documenting evidence. The stakes were high, and the tension between them grew. Every late-night session, every whispered conversation, brought them closer. Jordan's feelings deepened. No longer just a game, but something real, something worth fighting for. One night, as they worked in Ethan's apartment, surrounded by takeout containers and laptops, Jordan took a chance. He leaned in, kissing Ethan softly, hesitantly. For a moment, Ethan froze, and Jordan feared he'd misstepped. Then Ethan kissed him back, fierce and desperate, as if he'd been holding back for too long. They pulled apart, breathless, their foreheads touching. "This is a bad idea," Ethan murmured, but his hand stayed on Jordan's waist. "Then why does it feel so right?" Jordan whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. Their relationship became a delicate balance, passion and purpose intertwined. They were partners in every sense, but the danger loomed larger. Marissa grew suspicious, her questions sharper, her eyes lingering on them in meetings. Jordan felt the walls closing in, but he refused to back down. He'd found something worth risking everything for: Ethan and the truth. The final piece of evidence came at a cost. Jordan and Ethan uncovered a hidden server with damning proof of Pinnacle's fraud, but accessing it triggered an alert. Marissa confronted them the next day, her voice icy as she demanded to know what they were doing. Ethan lied smoothly, but Jordan saw the fear in his eyes. They were running out of time. That night, they met the auditor in a nondescript office in Brooklyn, handing over everything they'd gathered. The auditor, a stern woman named Clara, warned them to lay low. "This goes public, and Pinnacle's done," she said. "But until then, your targets." Back at Ethan's apartment, the weight of it all settled over them. Jordan sat on the couch, his head in his hands. "What if we lose everything?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan knelt in front of him, taking his hands. "We won't," he said, his voice steady. "Because we have each other." The next morning, Pinnacle's offices were raided. News vans lined the street, cameras flashing as executives were escorted out. Jordan and Ethan watched from a coffee shop across the street, their hands clasped under the table. The scandal broke wide open, and Pinnacle collapsed under the weight of its own corruption. In the aftermath, Jordan and Ethan faced a choice: stay in New York, where their names were now tied to the scandal, or start fresh. They chose the latter, moving to Seattle, where Ethan took a job at a small agency and Jordan freelanced, building a portfolio that finally reflected his talent. Their relationship grew stronger, rooted in the trust they'd forged through danger and sacrifice. One evening, under a sunset much like the one in their first tender moment, Ethan proposed. It wasn't grand, just a quiet question on a pier overlooking Puget Sound, with a simple silver ring. Jordan said yes, tears in his eyes, knowing they'd faced worse odds and come out stronger. Their love wasn't just a spark that ignited in a game of pretense. It was a fire that burned through lies, fear, and uncertainty. They played a dangerous game, but in the end, they won something far greater: the chance to build a life together, grounded in truth and love.